Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Bluefish Management Board. My name is Chris Bat-Savage. I'm the administrative proxy from North Carolina, and I'll be serving as chair for the meeting. Start off by approval of the agenda. Is there any additions or modifications to the agenda that any board members would like to make?
I don't have any hands raised.
Okay, we will then consider the agenda approved. Next is approval of the proceedings from our August 2020 meeting. Are there any edits, corrections, deletions to the proceedings?
I don't have any hands raised.
Okay, thanks. Then we will also consider those proceedings approved. Next up is public comment. This is an opportunity for the public to provide comment on any Bluefish related items that are not on today's agenda. I think there was one or two people who indicated they might like to provide comments. As you see, we don't have a very long time slot available for this meeting. So any members of the public who would like to speak, please keep your comments to 1 minute or less, so we can stay on schedule, but still allow for people to comment. So, Tony, is there any hands up from the public who would like to speak at this time?
We have John Tooth and Phil Zalzek and Tom Lilly.
Okay, I'll take them in the order that you mentioned. So, John, you can go ahead and start off the public comment. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Chairman and Council members. My name is John Tooth. I'm president of the JCAA, president of Saltwater Anglers of Bergen County, and trustee of New Jersey Outdoor Alliance. I want to make quick comments on the 3-bag limit for bluefish. I think it should be raised and possibly to its original bag limit of 10 fish. Why? My club members and other anglers told me they won't go on charter boats or party boats to catch only 3 bluefish. This hurts the recreational fishing industry, including tackle shops. The pandemic has also hurt this industry. It needs all the help we can give it by raising the 3 fish bag limit. My club members and others have told me there are plenty of bluefish offshore, but as we all know, they're not abundant in our inshore waters as they used to be, and thereby giving the impression that bluefish stocks are in trouble. Why are they not coming inshore? This is a mystery, but I will offer a few reasons why. Sandy has had a devastating effect on the fishing habitat, making it less desirable for bluefish and other fish from coming into inshore waters for bait and spawning. Sand mining for beach replenishment. The Army Corps goes to the locations where there are big piles of sand to lessen their time and cost to sand mine. They destroyed the Harvey Cedars lump that held all types of bait fish for many years and marine life. The Army Corps has had their eyes on the big Manasquan Ridge, another prime fishing location. To stop them from doing this, I arranged a meeting in Trenton with former DEP Commissioner Bob Martin in 2019, along with Jim Lovgren, a commercial fisherman, and Jim Donofrio from the RFA. Bob Martin agreed that the Manasquan Ridge should be protected. During this meeting, one of Bob Martin's staff in charge of directing the Army Corps where to sand mine admitted that he did not get angler input on where the Army Corps should not sand mine. Consequently,
John, can you please wrap up your comments?
Okay. The point I'm trying to make is the bluefish stocks may appear low in the inshore waters by justifying a 3 fish bag limit. There are other factors that may be providing a false impression on the true status of bluefish stocks, and according to bag limit should be considered to be raised. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those comments. Next up is Phil Zalzak.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, yeah. Okay, out of respect for the chairman who wants me to keep this to a minute, I already sent the entire board my email at 11:30 today. So here's the points I want to make. Bluefish were identified as one of 3 important predators of Atlantic menhaden, which are dependent on Atlantic menhaden for their survival. The other 2 are striped bass and weakfish. All right, so what are the key points here? The key points is that with regard to Atlantic menhaden and where they're taken from, 26.5% of the total allowable catch are taken out of the Virginia portion of the Chesapeake Bay. So that's an important data point for people who live in the Chesapeake Bay or around it. So what's the impact? I mean, really, who cares, you know? So the commercial harvest, for one thing, has gone down. For striped bass, for bluefish, striped bass, and weakfish, they've gone down 76%, 34%, and 98% respectively for commercial harvest. Also, there's been a significant decline in commercial fishermen. There's been a 32% decline for Maryland and a 40% decline for Virginia, for a total of 668 commercial fishermen. So here's the bottom line. Any addendum or amendment to the Bluefish Fishery Management Plan must include ecological reference points as a central consideration going forward. To leave this out would be to ignore the latest vetted science by the Commission. I thank you for your time and consideration. As I said before, supporting data is in my email. Y'all have a great day.
Yeah, thank you, Phil. Next up is Tom Lilly.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello? Yeah, okay,
Yes,
good.
yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. I hope you all have turned to our website, menhadenproject.org. And if you have, take a look at pages 13 and 14. Have you done that? Not hearing any answer.
I have, just speaking for myself.
Okay, great. Can I ask you this? We have a lot in our pages 13 and 14 concepts. And can you please refer those to the work group or TC for them to review and to comment on? Real quickly, if you look at the line drawn eastward out of Cape Charles, Virginia, at the top of the Chesapeake Bay, what benefits would there be to the Chesapeake Bay and the Atlantic coast to restrict purse seining to the U.S. ocean zone north of Cape Charles? In other words, you're then fishing in a well-defined, abundant Atlantic stock. You're fishing from schools that have already passed the bay. Number two, what would the benefits be for not fishing south of Cape Charles? As you know, there's a circulation out of the Carolinas where the menhaden winter, along with all of our other Atlantic migratory fish. And that circulation right now is not only important coming into the bay, but it's very important returning to the Carolinas in the fall. If that circulation is being depleted, which it is, those fish are not getting older. They're not being the spawners we need out there. There are just so many benefits of keeping that area protected. Now, how about real quickly, if I can, the time closures. All these things are mentioned, as you well know, in Bob Beal's letter, page 3 at the top by the consultant. Just think what would happen if we if we didn't open the season until July 15th. That would be
try to
8
wrap up
weeks.
your comments, Tom.
Okay, 8 weeks of 27 weeks. That would just about guarantee 30,000 tons of menhaden would get into Chesapeake Bay that are being taken out of the food chain right now. It's the right thing to do. That is the thing. Please refer that to the working committees or whoever else could judge the merits of that proposal. If politically necessary, as I mentioned, you could still let Omega fish.
We really need to wrap this up, please.
Okay, I just hope you'll all look at the website and refer to the issues you think important to the working groups. Thank you.
Thank you again for your comments, Tom. Tony, is there any other members of the public that would like to provide comment?
Excuse me, I don't have any other hands up. And Tom Lilly, if you could mute your microphone, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Tony.
Oh.
And yeah, thank you for the comments. And yeah, my apologies for not being able to provide any longer comment period. As I said, we have a short agenda today, but however, as with there's other Bluefish management actions going on right now with the rebuilding and allocation amendment, and the public will have opportunities to provide comments on that amendment later on this year. That will be taken up today. That'll be taken up next week, but just to make sure the public is aware that that is also going on. Okay, moving on to the next agenda item is consider revisions to the Addendum 1 Biological Monitoring Program. And I think Dustin Colson-Leaning has a presentation to provide us. So Dustin, whenever you're ready.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Let me just get this PowerPoint up and running. Should be seeing it on your screen. Is that the title slide? Is that coming through?
Yep.
Yes, it is.
Perfect. Yes, so thank you, Chris. Comments like those and comments on rebuilding, comments on allocation, all of that is really helpful for us as we move through the final stages of the Bluefish draft amendment. So like Chris alluded to, public hearings will likely be scheduled in late March to early April. So we really want to get people out and make those sort of comments, and there'll be more time and more forums for those comments to be made. But today, we're going to be discussing the recommended revisions to the Addendum 1 Biological Monitoring Program. And so I'll first provide just a little bit of background information to refresh everyone's memory. And I'll go over recent board activity, the technical committee activity that was recently taken on this issue, and I'll cover the TC recommended revisions to Addendum 1. Lastly, the board will have the opportunity to consider action on revisions to Addendum 1, and we'll wrap up with TC recommendations on the collection of length frequency data as well. So as you may recall, in August 2020, the Bluefish Management Board tasked the TC with reviewing the effectiveness of the Addendum 1 sampling design and reevaluating the optimal geographic range and sample size of bluefish age data. The TC met in September to analyze the requirements and provide recommendations to update the sampling protocols. And so as a reminder, under Addendum 1, states that account for more than 5% of total coastwide bluefish harvest from the 1998 to 2008 period, in addition to the state of Virginia, are required to collect a minimum of 100 bluefish age samples. That would be 50 from January through June, the spring period, and 50 from July through December, which is the fall period. So the TC suggested that the base years used to determine participation in the sampling program should be updated to a more recent time series and incorporate the revised MRIP estimates. The TC also thought that total removals should be used instead of landings because total removals serve as a better proxy for bluefish abundance. So here we have a table of the state-by-state contribution to coastwide bluefish removals. And bluefish removals here are defined as commercial and recreational landings and dead discards by weight. And this is for the base years 2010 to 2019. As you can see on the table, green indicates the TC recommended 4% threshold has been met by the state. And the TC chose the 4% threshold because it would maintain all the states that previously met the Addendum 1 threshold percentage, while also accounting for the inclusion of Florida as a result of the MRIP calibration. So in December, at the joint meeting of the Board and Council, staff presented the TC recommendations to the board in a little bit more detail, as well as the board discussed and actually initiated Addendum 2 to consider revisions to the biological monitoring program. However, after further review of Addendum 1, staff determined that it is possible to make revisions to the biological monitoring program through board action via motion, which would certainly expedite the process and be much quicker than a full addendum process. So with this in mind, I'll go over the technical committee's proposed revisions to the program. Just to summarize, the first proposed revision is to change the threshold for required participation in the H sampling program from 5% of total coastwide bluefish harvest using the years 1998 to 2008, and change to a 4% of total coastwide bluefish removals for the base years 2010 to 2019. Again, total removals are defined as the sum of recreational and commercial landings and dead discards. As was stated, this would add Florida to the list of states that are now comprised of Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Virginia, and North Carolina. An important note here, while Virginia did not meet the Addendum 1 5% threshold and doesn't meet this revised 4% threshold, Virginia would continue its current sampling regime for bluefish and provide the same minimum 100 samples as other states for the purposes of continuing Virginia's valuable collection of biological data used in the stock assessments. The second proposed revision covers the seasonal sampling requirements. Currently, the collection of 50 samples in the spring and 50 samples in the fall is a requirement, and this would be changed to a target in recognition that the availability of bluefish is not equal across both seasons for all states. It is also important to note here that states would still be required to collect 100 samples annually. Several TC members also emphasized the importance of still making every effort to collect H samples during times of the year with lower bluefish abundance to ensure comprehensive data collection for use in the stock assessments. States who fail to meet the seasoning sampling targets should demonstrate in their state compliance report that low bluefish availability was the primary cause for falling short of the 50 fish target, and that adequate sampling efforts were made to achieve the targets. So in addition to the recommended revisions to the Addendum 1 biological monitoring program, the TC also came up with recommendations in response to the board tasking of reviewing the increased importance of recreational discards and stock assessments. The TC recognizes that accurately characterizing the recreational release lengths is integral to the stock assessments, and any improvement to the methodology used to collect these data was recommended by the TC as well as the stock assessment scientist. The states of Rhode Island, Connecticut, and New Jersey already have volunteer English survey programs that provide release length data, but there are still some significant gaps remaining in characterizing the length frequency distribution of recreational releases from the coastwide perspective. I'll present this figure again that was presented in December. So this graph demonstrates the gaps in data collected, the data collection by displaying the spatial distribution of MRIP bluefish live releases estimates, and that's in blue, compared to the spatial distribution of release length data collected, displayed in red here in the figure. The bars represent the percent of each data set associated with each state, and the x-axis is in percent form to show each state's relative contributions to those two metrics. Release length data from the Rhode Island, Connecticut, and New Jersey volunteer English surveys are supplemented by the data from the American Littoral Society and MRIP Type 9s. As you recall, that's collected from for-hire headboats. So as you can see, recreational anglers are releasing a sizable amount of fish, shown in blue, in some states in the South Atlantic where we aren't collecting very much release length data, as shown in red. So this gap in understanding introduces potential bias in the characterization of discards in the stock assessments. This has also led to some mismatches between, number one, the data that Northeast Fisheries Science Center uses in their stock assessments, and number two, the data that the board, council, and the Greater Atlantic Regional Fisheries Office utilizes for catch accounting, accountability measures, and informing alternatives within the bluefish allocation and rebuilding amendment. So instead of relying on the release length data to provide estimates of discards and weight, the Boarding Council and GARFO have decided to turn to alternative methods, such as using the average weights of landed fish as a proxy for the average weight of discarded fish. Now, I just kind of highlight this mismatch in this issue to kind of emphasize why collecting reliable length frequency data is important. So this graph displays how the two methods can differ quite significantly. I've shown this before in the Bluefish Amendment presentations. The Science Center and the Technical Committee agree that the Science Center's method utilizes better data with actually collecting recreational releases, but it needs to be better equipped with more data representative of the entire coast. And the TC is recommending that more states take up this task of acquiring recreational release lengths from anglers. So in recognition of the financial and administrative burden that would be accompanied and required of a state to initiate a release length sampling program, the TC did not recommend requiring states to do so. Instead, the TC determined that educating the board on the research need, providing resources, and encouraging states to initiate programs of their own, this might be the right approach. With that said, here are the TC's recommendations. Essentially, states that comprise greater than 4% of coastwide removals for the period 2010 to 2019 are encouraged to collect recreational release length data. You'll notice these are the same states that were included in the age sampling requirements. These data include length measurements of recreational bluefish releases from anglers fishing from shore, private, rental boats, party, or charter boats. And lengths collected from anglers can be either fork length or total length, but will ultimately need to be converted to fork lengths for assessment purposes. States are also encouraged to consult with the TC for assistance with designing and initiating volunteer angler survey programs, and the TC has already met with ACCSP staff on potential alternatives for launching phone reporting programs and is well suited to provide assistance with launching a program. So here we have just a summary slide going over the recommended Addendum 1 revisions. This is what the board will be considering for action today. And then right below there, I have the TC recommendation, which more covers the encouragement to states to implement recreational release sampling programs of their own. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Dustin, for the presentation. Any board members have questions for Dustin?
I don't have any hands up.
Okay, always a sign of a good presentation. So if there aren't any questions for Dustin, the TC made some recommendations for revising the Addendum 1 sampling biological monitoring program. Would a member of the board like to make a motion to approve those recommended changes by the technical committee?
You have Joe Cimino.
Okay, Joe.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I believe staff has a motion ready to go for me if we can get it up.
Yeah, Maya, if you don't mind taking control of the presentation or the screen, that would be great.
Okay, there we go. So I would move to revise Addendum 1 to Amendment 1 sampling requirements from 5% of coastwide harvest to 4% of the total coastwide removals, defined as the sum of recreational and commercial landings and dead discards for the period 2010 through 2019. Adding Florida to the states required to collect samples and changing the 50 fish seasonal requirement to a target, but the 100 fish annual sampling requirement remains.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Do we have a second?
We have Emerson Hasbrook.
Seconded by Emerson Hasbrook. Any discussion on the motion?
You have, Joe, did you want to talk to your motion?
Well, I think the motion itself was the need for it was, as the chair said, a great presentation by Dustin and well laid out by the TC. But just thinking back to the idea of collecting release lengths I would just encourage states to do that on a voluntary basis since it is so important. So just wanted to add that in. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Any other comments on this motion?
With Hannah Hart and Tom Fody.
Okay, Hannah?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment for the sake of being transparent. We understand the benefit these age samples could provide. And in Florida, we're going to do our best to meet this requirement. But I just wanted to let everyone know that due to our sampling efforts, specifically where we sample and the gear type we use, the collection of bluefish is rather not consistent from year to year. So there may be years where we may not be able to meet this 100 fish requirement. But like I said, we're going to try our best to.
Thanks, Hannah. I appreciate that. Are you referring to the independent sampling Florida does, or is that also dependent sampling of the commercial fishery as well?
Just the independent sampling.
Okay, thanks. I guess, are there any opportunities for the state of Florida to collect samples from the commercial fishery? I know buying fish is sometimes cost prohibitive, but any carcass collection or anything like that? Just wondering.
Yeah, we do have dependent monitoring sampling where we go to seafood houses. So when we can intercept these bluefish, we absolutely will. But, it's pretty inconsistent here in Florida from year to year. The wholesale buyers as well as our independent monitoring when it comes to bluefish.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, totally understand that with bluefish for sure. Thanks for that. So next up is Tom Fody.
Yeah, the reason I think this is important because we base it on the average of the kept fish. We're making all kinds of assumptions, and if as most of the anglers I know, they only keep certain size bluefish, and they release the big ones because they figure they don't taste as good as the small ones. So unlike some fisheries, they're releasing all the big ones and keeping the small ones in the 2 to 3 pound range. When they catch 10 pounders, you're going to start releasing them because they really don't want to take them home to eat. Except if you go in shark fishing, then you used to use them for shark bait. But it's really depends on, so that's why you can't use the average.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, appreciate those comments. Any other comments from the board?
I don't see any additional hands.
Okay. Does the board need time to caucus before we vote? If so, just raise your hand.
It does not appear that way.
Okay. All right. I'll try this first. Is there any objections to this motion?
I don't see any hands.
Okay, great. Then the motion is approved by unanimous consent. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is to review and populate the advisory panel membership. And I think Tina Berger has information to present the board on that. So Tina, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have one nomination for your consideration and approval, and that's John G. Fountain. Excuse me for messing that up. John G. LaFountain, seafood processor and dealer from Rhode Island.
Okay, thank you for that. Would any member of the board like to make a motion to approve John LaFountain to the AP?
We have Jason McNamee.
Okay. Motion by Dr. McNamee. Do we have a second?
Justin Davis.
A second by Justin Davis. So it's moved to approve the nomination to the Bluefish Advisory Panel for John LaFountain of Rhode Island. Any discussion on the motion?
No hands are raised.
And hearing none, is there any objection to the motion?
No hands are raised.
Okay, great. Thanks for that, and welcome to the AP, John. Okay, thanks for that. And moving on to other business. Another check. Is there any other business to come before the Bluefish Board?
You have Roy Miller.
Okay, thanks. Roy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Very quickly, Delaware is going to be revising their AP membership list. It looks to me like both of our designees have passed away. Thank you.
Thanks, Roy. Yeah, appreciate you letting us know, and I look forward to seeing AP nominations for the Bluefish Board from your state. I think a lot of states probably need to take a look at some of their AP rosters, us as well. Anything else from board members under other business?
Mr. Chair, this is Dustin. I just am unable to raise my hand, so I have to interrupt so rudely. I do have
no
one
worries.
in response.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Thanks. So just in response to, nominating AP members and looking at your membership amongst states, if possible, the sooner the better, because there is a pretty important meeting coming up that will be scheduled in March or April, where the AP members will be reviewing the Bluefish allocation and rebuilding amendment alternatives. And so it's really valuable advice that they would provide and a really impactful step in the process. So if possible, within the next month or so, if we could receive nominations via email, I'm assuming, Tony, we can get them approved via board email votes. And that would just be great to get them in early on this really important step. Thanks.
Thank you, Dustin. Tony, is that a good path forward as far as any nominations to the AP between now and next month?
Yep. And sometimes what we do is we just go ahead and have those folks get on, come to the meeting. If we don't have time to get an email vote out there, we'll have them go ahead and come to the meeting and provide comments, and then we'll get them onto the committee shortly after, if they come in right before the meeting.
Okay, great, thanks. Last call on any other business from the board.
Yep, you have Bill Gorham and Tom Fody.
Oh, great. Okay, Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chris, as you know, I just want to get this on the record, as we've heard a lot of rationales and theories, but I want to get on the map, at least in North Carolina, and from my understanding too, in Virginia, is I don't want to say explosion, but the great increase in ribbon fish that have moved inshore, even to where we've seen big effort shift in our charter fleet, as that's become a targeted fishery, and they've all agreed in their feedback, and I've seen myself how it seems like when those big schools come in, the bluefish move out as well. And I would just like to get that on the record and see if it can be looked at, or if that's captured in intercepts where they're seeing more ribbon fish and less bluefish, and maybe draw a correlation instead of just pointing the finger at less bluefish. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. That's interesting comments and observations. Appreciate you sharing that with us. Look, and that's the kind of information that the AP will often provide, but also folks on the board that are out on the water like you. So thanks again for that. Okay, next up is Tom Fody.
Yeah, I was going to mention this at the policy board coming up, but since you were talking about advisory panel, I was wondering if Tina was going to send around to people that how our advisor members have been showing up to the meetings, because it's every couple of years we do this to see who's not participating and basically decide whether we have to change advisors. But I'll make that talk again at the policy committee meeting, if we could get out a list of our advisors and how much they're participating.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Okay. Anyone else from the board with any comments before we adjourn?
That's all.
Okay, great. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate all the comments and approving the new biological monitoring program targets for this plan. As both Dustin and myself alluded to, there's plenty of work ahead for both the Bluefish Management Board and the Mid-Atlantic Council with the Bluefish Rebuilding and Allocation Amendment later this year. So stay tuned. So with that, we are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.